Hey, this is Raleigh with Velit, and in today's video, I'm going to be taking you on a tour of replacing the fuel lines in my van, actually. They're about 2 years old. I was getting some issues with some failed to start, some issues at elevation, and so I wanted to inspect my fuel lines because the shoe shiner shoe is never polished. So stand with me in this video, and you'll see the whole process, taking the old line apart, building a new one, going over important parts during the process. And yeah, I can tell you my heater's been working flawlessly ever since I did this work. So worth a watch, worth a listen. Thank you. All right, here we are under the Promaster, and you can see the exhaust coming out the side there. Not really outside the edge like it should be, so we'll probably end up fixing that. And then if you follow it up, right behind the heat shield here is kind of where access to everything, where the heater is mounted under the seat would be. And get under here, you can see fuel pump, you can see intake hose, intake silencer, and you can see the fuel line right here, and it runs up to the heater beyond the back of it. I'll have to get a light to show that better. And then you got the exhaust running down and fuel hose over on this side. Actually, this side is what's running up to the heater, and that side is what's coming from the aux port on the fuel tank. So today we're going to be replacing the fuel lines and doing that on the bench. So we'll show you that along the way. All right, so I've got a headlamp on now so you can see a little bit better. I got the intake hose out of there, so you can see this hose goes up above the heat shield to the Promaster gas tank. We got the fuel pump here. You'll notice it's not on the correct angle. This should be tilted up at a 30-degree angle about to point towards the heater, but it's currently level, so we'll be fixing that as well. And then if you look up in there, you can see, I got the intake pipe off. You can see where the fuel line goes in, and you can see where the exhaust pipe comes out. And you can see I've got 4 bolts that I can pull, and I can pull the heater right out of the top without removing the seat. So I'm gonna do that now. All right, here I am beside the Ram Promaster passenger seat. This is how you access the aux fuel port and the top of the fuel sender unit or fuel pump. So I took the screws out, I took the floor pad out, I took the 3 screws out of this, and then if you lift it up, then you got access to see where the Ram Promaster's fuel port is. This is the fuel pump. If you want to install the standpipe, you can remove this ring and put a standpipe in kind of where it fits best. So I'll be doing that in a later video. But for now, we're just focused on this piece, which is the aux fuel port. So this is the fuel line that I'm going to be redoing. So this actually runs all the way down to the heater, and I can pull it out of there. I might have to kind of fish it from down below, but you can see how I've got it there. So anyway, I'll be pulling that and we'll check it out on the bench. All right. So here we are on the bench. I've got a new kind of fuel line kit with all the stuff in it. I've got a razor blade for cutting it straight, and then you can kind of see the fuel line. This is where it runs up to the heater, and then this is where the fuel pump pushes out, and then you can see connects there, and then it runs line all the way to where it connects to the aux fuel port. And I've got an aux fuel port adapter there, and this is a special made by Webasto. They make it's an elbow that goes from big to kind of the correct size fuel line. Since this fuel adapter is bigger around here. And so the ones that come with like a Velit heater are already at this size, so you don't need this adapter to get on the big barbs there. So anyway, I'll start constructing the new one and I'll show it to you side by side. In terms of cutting the fuel line, I'm using this razor blade to cut a really fine straight edge on that. If you use just like dikes or clippers, you will compress the line and you'll get it to look more like this one, which was cut with scissors and clippers. So you can see how kind of nasty and squished that side is versus how clean that is. Really important that these butt up to each other inside the fuel line, so there's no room for air gaps. All right, so I want to show you how some line, could look perfect and good. But as you can see, this hose right here should actually come in and touch the end of this connector, and there shouldn't be air allowed to just build up in here. So, and then if I pull this out, now that I've got it loose, You can see, look at the end of that thing. It is just not pretty. Sorry if I can get it in focus there. Just a horrible cut on there. So that needs to be flat, butted up against the inside of that aux connector. So, you know, I did two things that are fundamentally wrong with that setup. So when we fix this, I'll run the hose all the way in, use some lubrication or some sort of even just water to kind of push it into there. And that'll be it. So you can see I've marked a little mark on the line, and that lines up with where, if this is all the way into there, it'll show me where I'm at. So obviously I can't follow the bend with just one hand there, but I'll show you once it's connected. So you can see I've got it fed in now, and you can see my little mark right there. So I know I got it all the way in, and now I can feel that hard line in there, butted up all the way against there. So I'll probably actually end up throwing like a clamp around here as well as right here. Even though you really only need it kind of right here at the end of that connector. But if I just leave this one here, there's a chance that air could build up around the hose where it goes bigger right there. So I'm gonna throw another clamp right there. So 2 problems fixed with the old line right there. Not butted up all the way against it. And then also just, making sure that everything's all good and tight and there's no air gap in there. So also, the end of that line was not cut straight, so it wasn't able to butt up against there, and it was very pinched and restricted on the end. So lots of problems fixed just right there at the fuel connector. All right, for this next shot, I just want to illustrate how I'm doing this to where you can see that the end will be all the way jammed up against the fuel pump there, and then the rubber will be jammed up against where it ends on the fuel pump. And then you see I have my mark where I know that those are all the way in and touching. So not perfectly illustrated because I can't hold everything straight, but just gives you an idea of making sure that these 2 ends are touching perfectly like that. So that fuel molecule has the same internal diameter the whole way, no air bubble in it like that, where it's got a big connection point and chance for air to go in between them. So another improvement there. All right, so I'm just installing some of these clamps, and some people say you need to crank them all the way till it touches. That's probably gonna be too tight, and you can actually crush some of the plastic hard line if you do that. So just go till it's nice and tight, but don't overdo it. Some will go tighter than others. This one's obviously going onto the metal fuel pump. So, and another thing, people try to use just a flathead screwdriver on these, and you end up stripping it, and you can't get a good taste for how much torque is on it. So get yourself a 8mm or 7mm socket and use that to tighten them down. But you can get a lot of leverage. I'm just using this with my hands, and there's not actually a socket on it to tighten it. So that's a little tip for you there. Just be careful not to over tighten those, but definitely make sure they're not under tightened as well. So there you go. I just want to show, a lot of people think, oh, my fuel line's been in there a year, I put it in great, everything's fine. There's sometimes things you can't see, and you can't see until you pull it out, but this one is the one that runs from the pump up to the heater, and you can see at some point it touched the exhaust line there, and it's got holes burned in it, so that's no good. And then also you may not be able to see, but right there, that hose is cracking and deteriorating. So anything that's gonna kind of allow air into the system is not gonna be a good thing. So that pump depends on that impulse, and it's a weak little pump for a reason, and that controls the entire airflow. So even though you can't see stuff wrong with the line, doesn't mean that there isn't. So you can see right there where that line is compromised. All right, so I've got this fuel line all rebuilt. You can see how clean and everything is. There'll obviously be one more clamp on the end there on the actual heater, but you see all the clamps here. I'll be tightening this one more. I'm just gonna be pulling it to run the line over the exhaust shield, but you can see everything's all nice and clean here. This is barbed down here, so it actually doesn't really need a clamp, but I've just reused that clamp because it's a good size for it. And then this hose here runs all the way to the end of this, so I've just got it pinched right before it starts getting big again. There could be a little air gap in here. I could redo this. It could be a little better just using a different adapter that has a small barb on it that fits in the small line, but I like the way that this 190 is on top of the aux fuel port. So that's it. We'll go install it back in the van. We'll see how it works. All right, so it air coded one the first time I tried to start it with a new fuel line because there was no priming done. It's such a short line. It's gonna fire off here on the second time. You can hear the fuel pump pumping over there. It's kind of pumping, rubbing against the exhaust heat shield. So I'll probably move that a little bit so it's not rattling against it, but any second here, it's gonna go off. Let's crawl under there and see if we can see some fuel going. So you can see I got the pump on an angle now. And then if I look up there, you can see the fuel line. Can't see it too well, there's some light. And we wanna watch for bubbles in that one. I can see some bubbles move in, but it should fire off any second here. I can see bubbles getting passed through, but that's just from the line. It'll likely work through all those and be much better. So you can actually see right here as well. Little bubbles, but they're working out, becoming less and less. See, I quieted that pump down by just moving the heat shield. Should hear it take off any minute now. Might take a third try because there's a lot of air bubbles in there, but they'll work themselves out here and we'll get it going. All right, so after all that, I just kind of want to talk about some other things that I haven't covered in the video just yet. And so as far as fuel filters go, they usually come with the kit, but it's not always necessary. In our instructions, it says if there's possible contamination in the tank, you can use a fuel filter. That's common in like metal tanks with lots of loose pieces in the bottom. But for most vans with a plastic tank where the standpipe or the aux pipe doesn't go all the way to the bottom, you really don't need a filter. So that's one way to simplify the vacuum side of your fuel line. If you're using one like this, you should be aware that these unscrew. And so if those are loose, that's a way for air to get into your fuel line. So make sure that these are screwed nice and tight. This was one a customer sent back to us, and I just thought it was interesting because you can see how pinched that line is right there. So you can bet that the internal diameter is pretty messed up right there. So that's where it's like, yeah, my hoses look great, but obviously that's a problem right there. So pretty interesting. And then just in my video, you saw that I have a different fuel aux port adapter, and so this is the ones that kind of come with it. With the Velit heater, we have one for the Promaster, one for the Sprinter, one for the Transit as well. Two of them are the same for either, and then one's different. But you can see the one we send comes with the correct inside diameter just to go on that rubber fuel line. Okay, so a little different than in my video where you saw I had to kind of adapt down to a smaller hose length. And so that's kind of it. I just have a standpipe here just to show you the difference. This is, 2 millimeter inside diameter. So if we look at how small that hole is right there, kind of hard to see, but you can see it's about 2 millimeters or so, maybe 2.5. That's the idea, is you want that fuel molecule to be able to go that kind of inside diameter the whole way through the lines and everything. So anyway, just some closing notes on some things I didn't cover in the video so far that hopefully help you. Thanks for listening. Hey, it's Raleigh with Velit, and just to close out this video, I'm back in my van. It's been a few weeks now since that was recorded. The heater has been working flawlessly. Those startup attempts, it did take, I think, 3 or 4 tries without priming for that heater to take off, just because those lines were all brand new, all void of any fuel, so it had to kind of pump all the air out, pump all the fuel through, and get a nice solid prime going. And it's actually okay to do that, to let them air code one out. Many new installs, when you first install, you'll get those air one, those ignition failure errors as the fuel hasn't quite reached yet. And it's fine, you can just pull the fuse to reset that and try again. It doesn't hurt it to kind of run dry like that. You just want to avoid over priming it. If you use like a prime feature, you could end up jamming fuel all the way through, and it'll come out your air intake or combustion exhaust. So that's kind of it. You'll also notice in the video I changed from black line to clear line. The clear line's very nice because you can always get under there and monitor for bubbles in your line. That black line is from like an old another brand of heater, and so moving to the clear line is a kind of a nice way to be able to monitor that if I ever have issues. So thanks for watching. I'm going to keep this short. I hope that was helpful. Have a great one.